Hi everyone, this is Mr. Koutros, and I'm going to be talking to you about a lab that we're going to do where you're going to be able to describe differences between the properties of ionic and molecular compounds. This experiment is going to happen at 3 different stations. The first station we're going to do is interaction with a polymer. The second station we're going to do is conductivity, and then the third station we're going to do is melting point. You're going to circulate among the stations until you have all of the data that you need from this lab. One important thing to point out is that there's 2 different sides of the station, and you can share the chemicals between each side so that 2 different groups can be at the same lab station at once. Make sure to follow written procedures. If there's a difference between this video and a written procedure, follow the one on the sheet. You also are going to want to make clear labeled data tables as you go along so that it's easier to analyze your data later. Always make sure to write that down. For safety, you're going to want to wear goggles. If any chemicals get on your skin, you're going to want to wash that off right away and inform a teacher. There's going to be a hot plate at one of the stations. The hot plate is hot. Please be careful to give it a wide berth. Keep your arm away from it. Don't absentmindedly put your arm into it. Don't turn your back at it because you might get burned. Also keep in mind that it stays very hot for a very long time even after you turn it off. Finally, you're going to follow all the lab safety procedures that you normally do during all labs. Okay, and you're going to follow disposal directions that are on your sheets. The first station that we're going to do today, Station 1 is the sodium polyacrylate gel station. We're going to test the interactions between compounds and a polymer. The polymer we're going to use today is sodium polyacrylate. This is a long-chained molecule that has charges in it. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a very generous metal scoop, not a plastic scoop, of sodium polyacrylate in a plastic cup. And we're going to have water at the station, and 120 milliliters of water is going to go into the cup. You're going to have a tray at your station. On the tray, you're going to have a piece of wax paper that you can cut out. And once the sodium polyacrylate is all set, you're going to scoop it out onto the tray. If it's not a gel at this point, you're going to have to redo it, like if it's too liquidy. So we're going to divide this into 6 equal piles that are all about 3 to 4 inches apart from each other. And then we're going to put 1 scoop of a chemical on one of them, and then another chemical on another one, and then another chemical on another pile, and see what happens. So I'm going to take my first chemical, write it down on my lab sheet, and I'm going to put a scoop of that onto the first pile. Then I'm going to take my second chemical, put it on the second pile, again writing down which chemical I used, and so on. And what we're going to wait to see if anything happens to any of these piles. At the end of this lab station, if there's excess liquid on your tray, you're going to go and tilt the tray and let that excess liquid flow into the sink. Do not let gel or wax paper get into the sink because that could clog the drain. Any extra solids at the end of this lab are going to go into the trash. All right, this station is station number 2, which is the conductivity station. We have a container of some distilled water right here. We have 2 chemicals in the containers. You're going to want to write down what these chemicals are. And you also have a conductivity meter. This has a battery that's hooked up to terminals. It has a switch. You've got to make sure the switch is on. And it has 2 lights. And the way that these lights are lit up is explained by a key on the back that tells you how conductive the solution is. In other words, how well it conducts electricity. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be testing how conductive these substances are in the water. An interesting thing to do first, though, is to actually take the conductivity meter and try it just out on distilled water and take the data from that. So we're going to go and just lower the 2 metal probes into the distilled water. Do not get the circuit board wet. You don't want to lower the whole circuit board into the water, just the 2 tips. And we're going to check that to see if it lights up at all. Does it light up? Does nothing light up? And we're going to write down how conductive it is. Then we're going to take our 2 beakers that are at our station, and we're going to scoop a small amount of one chemical in one, just a very small amount, doesn't take a lot, and then a very small amount of a chemical into the other. We're then going to put some water in. We only need about 1 centimeter of water, about a ½ inch in each one. And you're going to swirl to mix. So swirl and swirl. Then you're going to take your conductivity meter and lower it into there, again, making sure not to get the circuit board wet. So you're going to interpret the lights to see how well the lights light up and use the guide on the back. An important part of this station is you've got to be very careful to avoid contamination between the different sources of chemicals at this lab. So we have a paper towel here at the station that we're going to use to wipe off the probes, the two metal probes between the stations. You might also want to get this just a little bit wet from the sink and use it to wipe it off, just to make sure there's absolutely no contamination that goes back and forth. That's the easiest way to spoil your results of this lab. Just to point out, I actually have a conductivity meter here that you don't get to use, but this one makes noise. And if we put the two metal probes from this one in, you can hear that it's conductive. All right, at this station, the way you clean up is just to pour the chemicals in the water down the sink and rinse it. Right, we're at station number 3 here, where we're going to be testing the melting point of different substances. We have 4 different substances at the station. We also have aluminum foil. You're going to want to rip off a small piece of aluminum foil that will be about the same size as the top of the hot plate. This is a hot plate that's very hot. You'll notice it's on right now. You're going to want to be extremely careful of this. No one should turn their back to it. You should avoid your arm getting near it, and you should only be very careful when you go near it and away from it. We're going to turn our aluminum foil into a boat, but it's actually going to be kind of like a tray. So we're just going to fold up the sides to make the edge of the tray, and then we're going to make sure the bottom's flat and put very small amounts of chemicals. I'm talking very small amounts, less than the size of a pea, onto each of the corners. So chemical, and paraffin is going to go into one of them. You can use the forceps or your hands to get in the last one. All right, you're going to want to write down the locations of each instead of relying on your memory. Right. Then you're going to very, very carefully take the aluminum foil boat and put it on the hot plate. Notice mine actually overlaps a little bit. That's not a good thing. You want to make sure that yours gets on the hot plate exactly right. And you're going to be watching very closely to record the order in which these chemicals melt on the hot plate. Okay. At the very end of the station, you're going to take your metal tongs and you're going to pull this off the hot plate, let it cool for a moment at the desk, and then put it into the trash.